why can the why can the United States afford to not do anything should things go crazy for the Philippines? Can you tell us a little bit about the importance of geography, the impact on the networks of alliances? Obviously, it's not going to look good for America if you're just going to abandon the Philippines, right? I mean, can you just spell things a little bit out for some friends who are unwilling to understand how these things work, how alliances work?
Sure, sure. Well, okay, yeah, and I think the last point is a really important one, which is that if the United States abandons an alliance, I mean, even I am still answering questions all the time about what we failed to do in 2012 when the Philippines lost Scarborough Shoal, right? So anytime we
And Mischief
don't,
Reef, Raymond, and Mischief Reef, I would also add to that. I think we also feel quite let down, to be honest, on the Mischief Reef. I remember very well in an event in Harvard, Joseph Nye, who served back then in the Clinton administration, was proudly saying we have no horse in that fight. But this 1995, 1996 is where when Clinton administration sent what not one but two striker groups to defend Taiwan in a sense. So and Taiwan is not even a treaty ally. So I hope people in the U.S. also understand where we're coming from. We're not being just some irrational anti. This is not some Duterte stuff. This is I think a legitimate patriotic question that every Filipino asks. And I don't want to put you on this.
no, it's
I just
fine.
want us to spell it out that this is about you know hard edged national interests and convergence of those interests. Yeah.
No, and I think it's all fair, right? And every country acts in its national interest, right? So, and that including the United States, including the Philippines, including China, every country. And so, and it's important to recognize sort of the trajectory of things. 1995 was a time the Cold War was over. There was a lot of talk about taking the peace dividend. There was, we had actually been sort of ejected from the Philippines. Of course, I was there near the end of that as a young airman in the Air Force. There was, the sort of the residue of the first Marcos administration, the dictatorship. All of that was sort of very fresh back then, and so it was a very different environment. 2012, when we talk about Scarborough Shoal, there we were still under kind of our China delusion in the United States, where we were trying to figure out how do we get this country into the fold. Just a little more capitalism will make them more democratic, and then eventually they'll be. We had these idealistic ideas about what was going to happen with China. And I think at this point, it's safe to say we're over that. We have kind of woken up. I mean, now we're talking about banning a social media app from the. Okay, I'm sorry. We're talking about forcing the sale of a social
Transfer
media.
of data from
Yeah.
ByteDance Beijing.
So, yeah, I mean, so I think that's another thing I think that the Philippines can sort of take some comfort in is that we are not walking around in a daze. I was in Australia when the 2017 National Security Strategy was released and the 2018 National Defense Strategy. Those were basically authored by the H.R. McMaster National Security Agency or the National Security Advisor and the Jim Mattis in the Pentagon, and that was kind of our formal national awakening where we said, okay, the reality is that we're in a competition with China, and that's just the reality. And it's funny that when we actually got those documents and we looked at them and we're like, well, yeah, but somehow we weren't acting like that until we got the documents. I mean, we were still kind of under this idea that, somehow capitalism was going to turn into democracy and somehow China was going to become a responsible stakeholder. And so that was a hugely transformational time. And so, I think that has helped the United States realize that when we look at our network of allies and partners in Asia, boy, that's important now. And I am really actually enthused about this upcoming summit in Washington, D.C. in mid-April, April the 11th, when President Biden is going to be hosting President Marcos and Prime Minister Kishida. This is, I think, a big event. It's a very symbolic event. It has some deliverables, and I can't imagine that pictures from what happened over the weekend off of Ayungin Shoal won't be front and center for a lot of those discussions.